Shale drilling companies in North Dakota in America want to dump radioactive waste in regular landfills and are pushing to change the state's laws. Their goal, to cut production costs as oil prices slide. Marina Portnaia explains.
Prices at the pump are at a 6-year low, and Americans remain delighted over the benefits tied to the plummeting cost of crude oil. At the same time, a battered oil industry is desperately searching for ways to cut costs, which in the long run may lead to an entirely new public concern. North Dakota's oil industry is pushing to change the state's laws to allow radioactive waste generated from fracking to be dumped at local landfills. The state's current laws prohibit landfills from accepting anything more than a minuscule amount of radiation, meaning oil companies are required to transport the radioactive waste to nearby states, which have less strict standards.
Currently, we have a very, very low threshold for material, radioactive threshold for material that can be disposed in the state. What they're aiming to do is actually raise that level so that a lot of the low-grade, what's called naturally occurring radioactive material or NORM produced in the Bakken oil fields, the oil fields of North Dakota, can be disposed of in-state instead of being shipped out of state.
Changing North Dakota's radioactive waste regulation would reportedly save the state's oil industry more than $100,000 in transportation costs.
It may help out some of the lower producers, smaller producers, who maybe have a little bit smaller profit margins, and for them, it may help them out as an option to be able to do something like this.
With U.S. crude prices falling more than 60% since June, the oil industry remains focused on its own survival. Marina Portnaia, RT, New York.
Online for you, why kids shouldn't get all the fun in the ball pool. Check out this relaxation room in London where grown-ups can de-stress with the help of 80,000 plastic balls. We've got the story on our website, rt.com. Also online for you, tennis ace Novak Djokovic does battle with an American tank. Watch the world #1 seemingly trading ground shots with the machine. Now, the story of an unemployed British graduate whose creative plan to land a job has left him back where he started. But it's not what you might think. Desperate for work, 22-year-old Alfred Ajani began advertising himself at a railway station, hoping to catch potential employers' eyes. He got offers from several companies, but months later, he's back at the same spot. There's still a sign in his hand, although this time it says "now hiring." That's because he's now a manager at a recruitment company. Alfred told RT he wants to help those going through the same tough times he endured.
I found the courage to get myself down to the station and do what most other graduates ain't doing to stand out and show employers that they're the right person for the role. I was only there for 45 minutes, much quicker than people expected. So I was there for 45 minutes and my battery died in about an hour. Turned it back on to see so many job offers, opportunities in Barcelona, Manchester United got in touch with me. But decided to take the role at the Asori Group to give me freedom to help other graduates because I want a degree to mean something again. We are planning a lot of new innovative activities to inspire graduates and to attract graduates to the Asori Group. My message and advice would be struggle to proceed. Me and my group of friends, we live by the motto STP, struggle to proceed. And that's what we do on a day-to-day basis. And I've struggled, I've been through the months of unemployment and now I'm in 5 months. There's been some progression and it's great. So, know what you want and go for it.
In other news, up to 10,000 Ukrainian troops are now all but surrounded in one of the flashpoint areas in the east of the country. Anti-government forces say they've cut off most routes for retreat. They're offering the military a chance to surrender, saying those who lay down arms will be released. But Ukrainian media reports deny the army is almost encircled, saying its artillery has thwarted the local militia's plan. Their fight is raging over a strategic railway hub near the border between the two eastern Ukrainian regions that are embroiled in an armed uprising against Kiev. Well, the situation is already being described as a bowl, a term already used for dramatic scenes seen in the region last August. The Ilovaisk Bowl saw the Ukrainian army surrounded after an ill-judged frontal assault before the troops agreed to lay down arms and leave through a humanitarian corridor. They suffered massive losses. Different sources put casualty numbers from several hundred to several thousand. plus over 500 prisoners of war. Officers and soldiers alike blame Kiev for the poorly planned attack, which turned into disaster. It sparked a wave of protests among troops who say they felt betrayed by the top brass. Meanwhile, in the city of Odessa, Ukrainian nationalists displaying Nazi-style symbols have held a torch procession in a remembrance event marking their fight against the Soviet Union. Members of the right sector movement marched through the city, chanting their usual slogans of glory to heroes and Ukraine above all. They were holding their annual commemoration of a battle against Soviet forces in the early 20th century. Well, joining them this time were members of a pro-Kiev National Guard battalion who are fighting in the east. This particular group is known for sharing some of the most radical nationalist ideas, who've also adopted Nazi symbolism. Elsewhere, further clashes in Bahrain's capital over the imprisonment of opposition leader Sheikh Ali Salman. Supporters hurled rocks at police forces who responded with tear gas. The Sheikh was arrested last month and charged with inciting regime change through force. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights called for his release within days of his arrest. A Japanese journalist has been killed in a car crash in southeastern Turkey when her vehicle collided with a truck. She was travelling to cover the planned hostage swap with ISIS. A Jordanian fighter pilot and another Japanese reporter held by ISIS were due to be exchanged for an Iraqi bomber by sunset on Thursday, but the deadline passed without the transfer taking place. And a series of deadly explosions have shaken Egypt's volatile North Sinai region. Militants targeted police and military posts, killing at least 27 people and injuring another 36. The area near the Gaza border has been under curfew since October, when terrorists stormed the checkpoint, killing dozens of soldiers. An offshoot of Islamic State known as Sinai Province says it's behind the latest attacks. Protesters have stormed the US Senate, launching a verbal tirade against Washington veteran and former US National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger. They accuse him of war crimes over the Vietnam conflict. More on that in today's Breaking the Set with Abby Martin.
Could I ask our Capitol Police to help restore order here? I've been a member of this committee for many years, and I have never seen anything as disgraceful and outrageous and despicable as the last demonstration that just took place. Get out of here, you low-life scum.
Yes, apparently Code Pink activists are considered scum to McCain. He went on to grovel, apologizing profusely to Kissinger for the disruption on behalf of all members of the committee. Listen, I know Kissinger's been out of the White House for decades, but even McCain must remember the egregious crimes from Chile to East Timor that were committed under his watch. This was a man who oversaw a secret bombing campaign across Southeast Asia, where experts estimate at least 100,000 people lost their lives in Cambodia alone. In Laos, more bombs, shells, grenades, and mines were dropped on the country between 1964 and 1973 by U.S. bombers than all of World War II. And then, of course, there was the decision to spray the toxic herbicide known as Agent Orange throughout Vietnam. The Vietnam Red Cross estimates that Agent Orange has affected 3 million people spanning 3 generations, while at least 150,000 children have been born with horrific birth defects since the end of the war. The laundry list of atrocities that Kissinger has been involved with as the main man at the State Department would take the rest of this show to discuss. But I'll stop now, because God forbid a warmongering bag of bones would think of me as a low-life scum.
Haunting images of an enormous Soviet military base which lies abandoned in forests near Berlin have been captured by drone cameras. And you can see the video of the giant facility thanks to our Rupley video agency. The compound was known as Vogelsang, and today it's slowly being reclaimed by nature after lying empty for more than 20 years. The base used to be one of the largest outside the Soviet Union, covering a huge territory and the capacity to accommodate about 15,000 people, including soldiers and their families. It used to be home to a wide variety of military vehicles, machinery, missiles, and even nuclear weaponry. And if you want to see the video in full, it is on rupley.tv. Now, if you were conjuring up images of airports, a few things might spring to mind. Planes, runways, or passports perhaps. But how about a flying bear? Well, this was being rumoured to be the new official logo for an airport in a far east Russian city. But its popularity online didn't quite take off as intended, with ridicule and a few doctored images on Russian social networks, as you can see. The airport itself says the flying bear isn't really its new emblem, just one of the entries in a competition. Coming up next, Erin Aid looks at the free trade deal that the US and EU are negotiating and how it could impact healthcare and the environment.